well, Inquisitor. You may save your threats. I am an old man, with not much time left to me. I shall tell you what you wish to know. I shall tell you of the day my home world burned, and all that I once held dear was taken from me. But in turn, I would ask a small favor of you. Is that acceptable to you, Lord Inquisitor? It is? Very good then. I will start my account with a question. What was special about Dawn's Reach? Do you know? Absolutely nothing. Oh, don't look at me like that. I'm too old for all this imperial nonsense. Not able to utter a word for fear of being branded a heretic. I just don't believe that naming a world after one of the Emperor's sons makes it worth anything more than any other world. My point was that my home world was one of 1,000,000 worlds that makes up the Imperium. What happened could have happened to any of those. But it didn't, did it? And here we are. It began when people started getting sick. Just a handful initially. But soon it was families, then communities. Quickly it became whole haplocks. And when the first hive city, well, we lost a lot of people. Millions. Millions in a matter of weeks. By the end of the first month, nearly 100 million people were gone. They tried everything, of course. The officio of the planetary governor, quarantine, vaccination, curfew, but nothing worked. So naturally they did what this Imperium does best. It went to war. It went to war with its own citizens. I would ask you, Lord Inquisitor, if you've ever witnessed refugee caravans stretching from horizon to horizon, being firebombed by Imperial aircraft. A foolish question, though. I suspect you've likely ordered similar atrocities yourself. In the Emperor's name, no doubt. When I close my eyes, I can see the distant black shapes of the bombers soaring overhead. The feeling of confusion at their presence turned to disbelief as they release their payloads. I can feel the impact, the shockwave tearing through my frail body. I can still hear the screams of men, women, and children as they burn alive, wreathed in promethium. The chorus of 1,000,000 anguished cries forever ringing in my ears. Then finally, that stench of cooking flesh carried on the wind, so pungent that your clothes would stink of it for days afterwards. That memory will join 100 other ones I would be free of. And the worst part, the true nightmare hadn't even begun. 1 year to the day since the first case of plague. 1 year of watching friends, family, loved ones slowly, painfully die in front of me, with no way of easing their suffering. That was when they came for us. One day there was nothing, and then the next, there they were. We'd lost so many by then. There was no one to call for help, no one to stand and fight. There wasn't even anyone to surrender, beg for mercy. Do you understand, Lord Inquisitor? Can you comprehend the pitiable state we found ourselves in? We no longer lived in homes, in communities, in cities. We persisted in our futility, surrounded by death, by the dead, decaying and rotting where they fell. We had tried to bury them all in the beginning, then to burn them on mass pyres when their numbers became too great. Then, when the dead outnumbered the living, we stopped trying altogether, and we simply decided to wait for our turn. Except, it never came, at least not as we expected. When our fate did arrive, by the throne, how we wished the plague had got us. It was as night fell, the setting sun beckoned them, descending upon trails of fire from the heavens to fall upon us as our final torment. You've met them, no doubt, my Lord Inquisitor. His angels. Of course you have. The things you've seen, I could scarcely imagine. And if I could, well, we wouldn't be having this conversation, would we? What I do know, my lord, is that what set foot upon my homeworld that night were no angels. Forgive me. A moment of distraction. I am an old man. I have lived a quiet life, a sheltered life. By the Emperor's grace, I have been spared many of this galaxy's horrors. But what I saw, surely that is the most terrible of all the hell's nightmares. They were giants, barely in the shapes of men. Forward they came, shrouded in darkness that bled from them like darkest night. They growled and shrieked as they stalked forth. Their form may have imitated men, but the blackened husks of their souls were more akin to beasts. They were there to hunt us. I can't tell you why they spread their plague first. Surely this only served to deprive them of sport. It was only later that I learned that part of their dark game was the instilling of fear. Well, they certainly succeeded there. I don't suppose an inquisitor has much use for fear, but for us mere mortals, it is as part of us as is our flesh. Fear is not knowing, but terror is the full, awful awareness of a thing. What those things inspired in us was absolute in its horror. They awakened something primitive in us. In me. I felt it the moment I laid my eyes upon them. Something cold, like shards of ice, uncurling within the depths of me. It froze my blood, locked my joints, and damned near stopped my heart until a single word remained in my mind. Run. I am 90 years of age. I haven't so much as hobbled for the better part of a decade. But I ran. When I looked into their eyes, and those empty, lifeless black eyes looked back into mine, I ran. The killing began the moment they saw us, and it wasn't clean. None of it was clean. They went for the limbs, legs mostly, blown apart and shredded, riddled with shrapnel corrosive acids. I saw one stand and watch as a young woman pulled herself along the ground. Tears streamed from her eyes and down her face, leaving 2 lines of clear skin visible beneath the blood. Her blood. She'd lost both her legs, just above the knees. I don't know how she was still conscious between the agony and the blood loss. A particularly cruel survival mechanism is the will to survive. I would have spared her what came next. What that monster did with that awful serrated blade. I wish I could say I at least stayed to watch. Her eyes locked on mine. I wish I could say I stayed to at least be there with her. In those final agonizing moments. But the fear, the terror stole that final comfort from that poor girl, and it made me a coward. A damned coward. I ran, and yet no matter how far I got, the killing was always there, surrounding me with the sounds of gunfire and screaming, so much screaming and begging, voices begging for death, begging for mercy, begging for the Emperor, begging for it to end. But it wouldn't. It couldn't. These nightmares, these monsters, they had come to indulge themselves, and they were far from done. Blood. Soon it covered everything. The ground, the walls, the ceilings of buildings I passed through. It began to flow. to slosh around my ankles. The iron scent of it so rich in the air I began to gag I could taste it. Eventually, despite my terror, I could run no more. My heart hammered in my chest. My clothes were drenched with sweat, and my head pounded from exertion. I fell to my knees, my will to go on broken by the living nightmare that had become my life. Such was my despair. I actually wished for the months I had spent surrounded by the decomposing remains of my loved ones. Can you even believe such a thing? There I was, weeping in the dark, pleading for it to end, begging for death. That's when I heard it. That voice. That terrible, haunting voice that carved its way into my mind. It came from out of the dark, and it crawled into my soul. It started with a laugh, if that's what you could call it. A hollow, lifeless, joyless sound devoid of all warmth, all mirth, all kindness. The laugh of a creature consumed by cruelty. And here it was with me. Do not cry, old man, said the voice from the dark. You do not die this night. No, not you. For you, we have a very special purpose. I tried to talk, to answer back, to beg for it to stop. But he bid me silence. Shh, my friend. Hold your tongue, lest I be forced to take it from you. The voice said, letting slip a callous laugh. What we do here will not remain here. It will spread far across the sector. The suffering and the misery transmuted from the physical to the immaterial and infecting the minds of all who hear it like a virus. Madness will reign as the tide of insanity burns out every psyker who hears it. Then they will pass it on to those who cannot hear it themselves, and so it will go on until all know the gift I have bestowed in the Grandfather's name. The voice laughed once more, and my blood turned to ice in my veins. I whimpered, my voice shaking as I tried to speak a single word. Why? I had stuttered. I saw it then, from out of the darkness. a razor-thin flash of a smile. I was witnessing my world die around me. I am hearing its inhabitants suffer torment beyond all sane imaginings. I am beholden to the end of everything I have ever known, and yet, despite it all, that smile was the most terrible thing I had ever seen in my life. Because, my friend, you will be my messenger to the ones who come here seeking answers. You will tell them of what transpired here. You will tell them of this conversation. You may even try and tell them of me. The voice had said with a laugh. But what you must say is this: the decaying dread has returned. The sons of the Eighth bring murder and madness to the followers of the Corpse Emperor. The will of the Night Haunter will come to pass. We are the Nightlords, and we have come for you. Then, my Lord Inquisitor, it was gone. They were all gone, along with all those who still lived. I try not to think about the fates of those poor souls. A year and a night of pain and suffering and death, just to send a message. And sent it I have. Not for them, not for those monsters, but for all those lost, all those who deserved peace but got pain, for all those gone, never to be remembered, for I am the last of dawn's reach. And now, for the favor I wished of you, my Lord, grant this old man his peace. I am old, and I have seen too much, and I no longer wish to endure. My life has become a purgatory. Free me of my waking torment. Let this old man finally be free. Let me rest. I beg of you, my Lord. Thank you.